A very warm welcome to this debate, FaceTime, the pros and cons of burqa bans. My name's Tim Panton and I'm delighted to be chairing this discussion, and the discussion is kindly supported by Living Freedom, who are sponsoring this theme throughout the Battle of Ideas, the theme on freedom of speech. When Reform MP Sarah Pochin used her first PMQ's address in the House of Commons to call on the Prime Minister to ban the burqa, in the interest, she said, of public safety, apparently a question that she had done or achieved from a crowdsourcing exercise to come up with what her first question should be. In raising the question, she reignited a debate which I think has been ongoing in this country and around Western Europe for some time. In France and in Denmark, Austria, Belgium, all have introduced laws which limit or prohibit face-covering veils, the burqa or the niqab. And some see this very clearly as a question of cultural identity, of integration, and of public safety. The burqa is a very prominent sign, they might suggest, of the alienation of certain members of the Muslim community from the rest of society. Others view a ban as something which is a necessary step, perhaps, in the liberation of women from a symbol of their inequality, and they see the burqa and the face-covering veil as more than simply a symbol of women's limited freedom. And then for opponents of the ban, whatever they might feel about the burqa or a face-covering veil itself, banning the veil would be an attack on two very fundamental freedoms, freedom of religion and freedom of expression, hugely important freedoms and so closely intertwined. So the issue that we are going to explore today, these questions and perhaps plenty of others, is what should we do in relation to this? We've got about 75 minutes to explore these themes. We've got a panel who are fascinating in what they have written and broadcast and discussed on this topic previously, and they're all incredibly interesting. I'm going to give them very short introductions, but if you want to know a bit more about them, there is more on the Battle of Ideas website, so you can look up some of the other things that they've done. And I'm going to introduce the panel in the order that I'm going to ask them to make their opening remarks. So on my far left, we have Faika El-Nagashi. She's the director of the Athena Forum, which campaigns for democratic values. We'll clap all the panel at the end. Okay. She's the director of the Athena Forum, which campaigns for democratic values, political courage, and sex-based rights. And she is a political scientist and formerly a member of parliament in Austria. Speaking second will be Khadija Khan, who is a UK-based journalist and broadcaster. She's an editor at the magazine A Further Inquiry, and she writes and broadcasts about women's rights, minority rights, extremism, and Islam. Speaking third will be Josie Appleton. On my immediate right, Josie is director of the civil liberties group, the Manifesto Club. She's author of Officious, The Rise of the Busybody State, and she's the writer of the online journal Notes on Freedom. And then speaking fourth, before we come out to you, will be Ralph Leonard. Ralph is a British-Nigerian writer and commentator. He's author of one of the Battle of Ideas letters on liberty, called Unshackling Intimacy, and he writes for Unheard, Quillette, The New Statesman, and Subaltern magazine. Faika, can I ask you to start?
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. I'm going to make 3 arguments for a burqa ban, and while we're at it, for a niqab ban too. And I will address the positions that are usually brought up in this discussion, that a burqa is a form of clothing and religious practice, that in some cases it represents a woman's choice, and that change of this practice should come through social reform and education. 1. The burqa is not a piece of clothing. Framing this as the policing of clothing, or worse, women's clothing, is to fall into a conceptual trap. The complete covering of a woman from head to toe is not a choice of clothes. The sole function of this piece of fabric, designed by men, is social, and it is to make women and their autonomy disappear from the world around. This does not happen in a vacuum. It is not a theoretical or a philosophical question to ponder about the neutral potential of fabric that covers a neutral body and when or whether this might be considered acceptable clothing. There is one country, Afghanistan, that shows the world in real time what the burqa is made for, and many others that use approximations of it for precisely the same purpose. The burqa is not a piece of clothing, nor is it a private act of faith or religious practice. It is specifically a public practice. one that seeks to regulate the visibility of women in society. It is a cultural artifact of control. And we already restrict practices that claim religious justification when they violate basic human rights. Forced marriage, child marriage, female genital mutilation. A burqa ban is not religious persecution. It is the defense of universal human dignity, the recognition that no belief system should be permitted to erase half of humanity from public life. 2. Some women's choices cannot be allowed to subjugate all women. The burqa is not a variation on the theme of modest clothing. It is the symbolic expulsion of women from public life as embodied subjects, with a face that is the site of recognition and connection. It denies women existence as perceptible human beings to anyone outside the private family sphere, where men are already certain of their control. And yes, some women willingly submit to that control for whatever reason, as they do to other harmful practices. Yet we do not follow their logic and indulge their belief. There is no empowerment in wearing the burqa. It is always easier to frame one's story as one of triumph than of defeat, as choice rather than victimhood. But behind every burqa is a story, one that tells of women's circumstances and opportunities, whether they can leave their family home, move freely, and live where and how they choose, whether they can marry and whom, how they can decide on motherhood, whether they can work, whom they can befriend, how far they can go. The burqa is the visible signifier of all the choices that cannot be made. 3. If we agree that the burqa is harmful, a harmful symbol, an expression of the subjugation and hatred of women, shall we then proceed to ban it? There will be no sudden moment of realization or change of heart among those who benefit from it. The burqa is part of a social system that can't be reformed while it's still normalized. It is the visible extreme of an invisible order, the mark of a ruling class of men, whether in a country, a community, or a family. A burqa marks you and renders you invisible at the same time. Those who become visible as both perpetrators and victims of an extremist ideology are the women. Those who stand out yet remain unseen, not the men. They move through the world unmarked and unbothered. It is the women who are deprived of the ability to exist as social human beings, participating in a world that they can fully engage with. The state has a responsibility to draw a line and ensure that women's rights are not surrendered to private codes of control and coercion. If the price of appearing in public is total anonymity, the public ceases to be shared. It becomes male only by design. A ban is not a punishment of women, but a refusal to accept a civic space built on their disappearance. Where the state abstains, it leaves women alone in negotiations with their families, with imams, or local pressure. A law sets a civic norm and establishes boundaries that protect women and girls. Cultural change alone has failed to protect women from coercive or segregationist norms in many contexts. In conclusion, the problem is not Muslim presence, it is female absence. The objection is feminism, and the debate is between those who see women as full citizens and those who don't. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me another opportunity to talk about this issue rather than expressing my own personal liking or disliking, I would like to emphasize critical facts about wearing a burqa and why it should be made illegal. And I urge my fellow panelists and esteemed members of the audience to consider the argument of religious freedom and individual choice related to this one attire, especially when this becomes a matter of public concern in the light of the following facts. The burqa, as Faika said, is not a benign piece of clothing. In fact, this attire is often imposed by men, allowing them to judge women's character. Any defiance can lead to labels such as vulgar and whore, and in extreme cases, this may result in violence against women and girls for being disobedient. This attire objectifies women and sexualizes children. Wearing it suggests piety, and refusing to wear it implies she is asking for it. This belies the notion that burqa or niqab is a matter of choice for women at all. The burqa and niqab also act as a significant barrier to social integration. These are garments often associated with particular extreme, deeply misogynistic cultural and religious practices that can lead to the development of ethno-religious enclaves where individuals may isolate them rather than engage with the mainstream society. This separation not only hinders people from embracing the diverse values of the wider society, but also this contributes to a lack of mutual understanding and social cohesion. Therefore, the claim that banning the burqa will alienate Muslim women is misguided. Women from these communities are already alienated, not by the government, but by the ultra-conservative mores, which are not even required by the religion. While some claim to choose to wear burqa, many are forced. It states obligation, it states duty, I would emphasize on this point, to establish a system that ensure individual freedoms in these cases, as it happened in 1861 in India when sati ritual was banned under British rule. And then female genital mutilation was outlawed in England and Wales, in Northern Ireland in 2003, and in Scotland in 2005. Pertinently, these, while inhumane practices, were considered religious freedoms, religious right for some people, yet the state intervened. Just imagine for a second, if state had not intervened, the consequences of letting such inhumane rituals and practices prevail in a civilized society such as ours. Let's not forget that this attire is not even prescribed in Islam. This is a matter of debate among Muslims, which makes it a sham norm rather than a matter of religious freedom. I would even say that even it is deemed a religious right or religious freedom. Now, freedom to practice your religion and freedom to manifest those beliefs are two entirely different matters. Article 9, paragraph 2 of European Convention on Human Rights clearly states that freedom to manifest one's religious belief can be restricted or limited by democratic laws to protect public order and rights of others. Now, not to mention concerns about this attire, which are related to security of the people. Just 2 weeks after 4 British Muslim suicide bombers killed 52 people on July 7, 2005, a suspect, Yasin Umar, accused of trying to blow up the London Underground, disguised himself by wearing a black burqa. This explains well why this attire is a public safety concern. And last but not the least, given how false accusations of Islamophobia and racism are hurled around to stifle discussion on such crucial issues, we should confront the normalization of burqa and niqab and the ideology behind it, which dehumanizes, alienates, and discriminates against women and girls and primary school-going children here in the UK. But before we so audaciously criticize European countries for banning burqa over security concern or to counter Islamism or radicalization in their societies, One should remember that Morocco, Tajikistan, Tunisia, Algeria, Turkey, Egypt, Kosovo, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan are among those Muslim-majority countries that have placed a ban on full face covering in public spaces and in educational institutions. This ban has been motivated by the security concerns and a firm determination to protect their local culture and to counter radical Islam. And these are all Muslim-majority countries. So why it is so wrong when Italy, Austria, France, or other European countries, including ours, is even talk about banning burqa, which is clearly not a benign attire. In fact, this attire comes with a deeply misogynistic, discriminatory, inhumane, and antisocial ideology that not only perpetuates women's rights abuses, but also becomes a matter of security and a barrier to the social integration. Now, the moral of the story is this, that the visionary of the societies are sometimes required to intervene to rescue persecuted and marginalized people in the society, and that cannot be done without offending the oppressors of these people. These visionaries are required to intervene to preserve humane values, secular democratic values that we espouse as a society, and that cannot be done without offending the sensibilities of extremists. Now, I firmly have decided that I'm not going to sit on the fence and argue about burqa ban with ifs and buts, because I have seen for so long that the religious fanatics have subverted the British law, the humane law, the equal law we have it for everyone, and they have done so by using the language of human right, religious freedom, and feminism. I'm not going to sit on the fence anymore and say that, yes, I can endorse it in any way, in any shape or form. So since the defending the rights of defenseless is at stake, I am prepared to take a chance, and I hope that I'm going to get lots of support from the esteemed member of the audience. Thank you so much.
Khadija, thank you. Sounds like you may have some support from the audience. Josie Appleton.
Thanks very much. Very interesting points. I think it's a very important principle in modern society that you don't cover your face. You know, you have open face-to-face dealings with your fellow citizens, and whenever people cover their face, it means they're cutting off that relationship. So whether that is Ninja or the Almoravid Empire, they were all masked, or in the case of women, it's basically saying you don't exist, you don't relate. But I think there's another important principle, which is the state doesn't regulate dress. You know, it's not for the state to say how long your skirt should be, what hat you should wear, who can wear purple, who can have how much gold in their cloth, all of which were the subject of legislation in previous societies. And I wouldn't be convinced by examples of other countries banning the burqa to say we should do it too, because I think they're countries that in a way are trying to become modern. So Turkey banned the fez hat. Would we ban the fez hat? They were trying to become modern. They weren't modern. We are modern. And so we should behave as moderns. And if you want to walk around in a bear suit, you should be able to. I think it's also important to look at the meaning of the burqa in the societies that we're talking about, because I think it's very different from its traditional meanings of somewhere like Afghanistan, where it very much is an element of community control of women. I think that the number of women who actually wear the burqa in Europe or in the UK are very small. So France, they think it's about 2,000 women. Denmark, which banned the burqa, 150 women. And in Spain, a region of Spain that banned the burqa, they think about 40 women. Very small number of women. And yet, the kind of obsessive quality of the ban and the kind of weight that is put upon this item of clothing that a few hundred or maybe a couple of thousand women wear is tremendous. You know, you have the highest French ministers of state saying that this is the cause of the fragmentation of French society. This item of clothing worn by these women is a cause of fragmentation. And Belgians saying we can at last be proud of being Belgium because we've done something that's really kind of splendid and brave. We've banned women from covering their faces. So I think that the kind of rhetoric and the obsessive quality of this debate, which has been going on in France for 25 years, I think there have been about 3 bits of legislation and constant attempts to legislate for women's headwear in France. So currently it's about the burkini, covering up on the beaches. Also attempts to ban parents accompanying school trips from wearing the veil. There's been a ban on the veil in this classrooms and nurseries. Women's headwear in France is one of the most legislated parts of national life. Why is that? That's very strange. I think you also need to look at who's actually getting fined for wearing the burqa in France, because there's a French property developer who offered to pay everyone's fines, and there was 1,500 in the first 5 years, and a lot of them single mothers, converts to Islam, people who've rediscovered their faith, often people who wore miniskirts as young people. These are different. These are not women being oppressed or forced to wear it. It means something different. I think you've got to always look at the meaning of a piece of clothing. It changes over time. It changes in the context of different societies. I think the reason for this obsession is almost like this is the bottom line. So French liberal republicans, when it says, what are we? The one thing it can say is we're against the burqa. And this unites the left and the right. So Régis Debray, and then you've got the National Front. Everyone in between can agree on that they really think the burqa is a terrible thing and they need to ban it. I think something that also is worth noting is that the content of the bans are becoming increasingly repressive. So I think to start with, there was a lot more stuff about women's rights. Now a lot of it's about security and showing your face to the state. And, that for me is not a positive thing. And I think in a strange way, it's given covering your face a sort of radical edge, like a kind of resistance to the state. So in France, the burqa was banned in, it was 2010, I think, but 2013 they had these riots where the police tried to do a contrôle d'identité on a woman. So they tried to take off her burqa to look at her face. She bit him, and there was a massive riot and burning cars that went on for several days. She went to court, she gave a V sign to the camera, and this is not about women being oppressed. It means something different. If you have a state that's always trying to see your face, I was in Brixton yesterday, there's a facial recognition camera. They want to see your face. They want to scan your face all the time. In that context, they're always saying, who are you? Prove who you are. Let's see your face. Then actually covering your face becomes a sort of a space where you can actually be yourself. And it's not just women. So my son's favorite French rapper, a guy called Gambino, he wears sunglasses, headscarf to hair and a cap. You can see nothing. He's more covered than a burqa. And for him, it's basically about being himself. If you can't see your face, you can be yourself because everyone's trying to scrutinize you. And that is terrifying because showing your face is about becoming visible to the state, not actually about relating freely to citizens. So that's a kind of new element to the debate, which I think is worth considering. And security is often mentioned as one of the reasons why it needs to be banned nowadays. And I think we should also remember that the state that banned the burqa made the face mask compulsory. So in France, you went into post office and after the ban, and it would say, Marianne doesn't hide her face. A picture of Marianne. I think she covered her chest at this point, but she had an open face. But then they had signs saying you must cover your face to come in the post office. So the state that said you can't cover your face then says you must cover your face. And this was very much about not showing your face. It wasn't really about because you had to wear face coverings when you were on the beach or walking in the countryside. It was about the face becoming this dangerous thing because the face represents those free face-to-face dealings between citizens, and the state actually finds those relatively dangerous and actually likes the idea that in relation to other people you cover your face. So I think that the idea of the free human relation being dangerous is actually something that has a lot of resonance within the today's state. I think that for today's state, the ideal is you're visible to it, but invisible to each other. So I think that kind of gives it a different nuance. So I think overall, I disagree with the regulation of dress as a principle. I think it's very important in any case to look at what the dynamics are. Why are people wearing it? Why are they calling it to be banned? Who's wearing it? And those are very different in different societies. And I think that the issues that are faced in Western societies are very different from that which traditionally embedded in the burqa, which is also embedded in, for example, women covering their face from ancient Greece onwards. Every society, when women be excluded, they have to cover their faces or their heads. And I think but the meaning that's going on now, I think one should be curious about what the dynamics are at play. And certainly in France, when you have a woman in a burqa biting police officers, I saw a video of in the riots, a woman in a burqa raiding the Aldi supermarket in a riot. It's a very different dynamic going on. I think that is it gives a different context.
Josie, thank you.
I realise that, the chairman notwithstanding, I am the only man on this panel, and that I'm speaking on an issue that's very particular to women. I do realise that I am kind of in danger of stepping into some hot waters, but I'll begin with this. I'll begin with this statement. The woman who sees without being seen is a frustration to the colonizer. That was said by Frantz Fanon in the 1950s. Now, obviously, this is not the Algerian War of Independence we're talking about, but he is right in a sense that there is something frustrating about a veiled woman who can see you, but you can't see her. It's unfair that she is exposing her, that you are exposing your face, and thus are identifiable and accountable for what you do and what you say, while she exempts herself from that same exposure and scrutiny. You don't feel like you're having a reciprocal interaction or relationship with that person. Indeed, many things can be said about the Muslim face veil. After all, you're right. It's not just a merely piece of cloth. It is very symbolic. That it is regressive, absurd, and misogynist. All that is true. The idea that women should be shrouded from public view and be contained exclusively to the private sphere because of religious dogma, modesty, and a weird patriarchal, paternalistic idealization of women as precious yet fragile flowers that, if exposed, can easily be overwhelmed by flies. A troubling view that society should not endorse. It is also said that it's a security risk, since you can Google cases of common criminals disguising themselves as shrouded Muslim women to commit robberies and the like, because they know, the smart ones at least know, that you're not likely to be challenged in that context. That the niqab, it's also said that the niqab and the burqa makes integration and accommodation more difficult. Indeed, that is the point of it, especially in the context of public-facing jobs where seeing your face is crucial, like teaching or being a judge or interacting in civil society. Some women certainly face communal pressure and expectation to conform, that to be a good Muslimah is to be covered up or else you're shamed. But it must be stressed that most Muslim women don't cover their face. It's a small minority that do. Most Muslim scholars will say that it's not required. And this is conservative Orthodox Muslim scholars I'm talking about. Many of its strongest opponents are Muslims, whether religious or irreligious. So for all these criticisms, why should it not be banned? As a matter of principle, I am generally uneasy with the idea of a state intervening into the personal sphere, especially in regards to clothing. We're not talking about places within civil society making their own rules, like schools or private businesses, which are at liberty to form their own dress codes that forbid face covering of the kind, or necessary security regulations like at airports. We're talking about a blanket ban imposed by the state that will penalize, even criminalize, individuals, such as fining them, as Italy has recently proposed with its proposed burqa ban. Even from the perspective of saving women who are pressured into it, this makes no sense. Sex trafficking is a problem, but it would be wrong-headed to criminalize its victims. Likewise, it is odd to criminalize those who are meant to be the beneficiaries of such a ban. Then there is also the question of freedom of conscience. Yes, the injunction to cover your face in public is a minority view in Islam, but is one that is sincerely held by that minority, which means that whatever one's beliefs about whether religious or secular, one should be free to act upon it and express it, short of inciting violence or doing harm to others. That that it is a minority view or a minority within a minority practice is even more reason why state coercion on this question should be opposed. What use is freedom of conscience if it isn't for minority views that even the majority would abhor? Some women are pressured into it, no doubt, but some are not. Some women, they will say, if you question them, really want to live a privatized, isolationist existence and feel this is in line with their religion. Some of them wear the niqab as a Muslim version of the trad wife aesthetic, a kind of rejection of modern society. And that is a view that we also have to get to grips with. And in that sense, Josie is right that in, say, Western societies, it has a different meaning that what it will have in, say, other Muslim majority contexts where this argument is had at a different register. Now, you could say that that those women are delusional, but people are allowed to have their delusions without being penalized for the state for it. This is why the case against the burqa rests on either muscular liberalism or a kind of cultural nationalism, which means that the argument over it is not one of law or crime. It's about social norms and customs. And to the extent that the face veil should be treated as a problem, and it is a problem, and you can interpret how big or small that problem is, it's a matter within civil society, not the state. To oppose a blanket ban by the state is to only begin the debate about the face veil, not to end it. An important reason for minimizing state intervention on this question is to allow civil society to thrive and take the lead. Values is a word that's often get hurled around in this argument a lot. Values do not emerge through the state from above, but through the civil society from below, where ideas and beliefs can clash with one another, and individuals can truly shape the society and form a consensus within it. And it is in that sphere that I think this argument should be held within civil society, not the state.
Ralph, thank you very much.